You heard of Dalton Chisholm? Dalton Chisholm is suing the Bank of America for $1,784 billion trillion, which coincidentally is a larger amount than the Earth's gross total domestic product. Now, apparently, his reason for suing the Bank of America arose from several frustrating phone calls he made to settle some checks that he had deposited incorrectly. So along with this absurd amount, Chisholm also asked that the money be deposited into his account the following day, and he wanted the bank to add an additional $200,164,000 for his troubles. People have different ways of responding when they feel they have been treated unfairly, don't they?
Thank you.
Some actually meet with people who have treated them unfairly and try to work it out. In the sermon 2 weeks ago, Jesus said, go to the church member who has offended you and pour out your trouble and try to get them to see the offense from your perspective. And then, as we have seen in this story, some people sue. Litigation as reality TV is a booming business. And at the end of the day, some mumble and complain, as the workers did in this Jesus story that Matt read for us. You see, what had happened right before that was this. The landowner had gone out early in the morning and hired some workers for a fair day's wage. The landowner went out again at 9 a.m. and hired some more workers at a fair day's wage. And again at 3 p.m. and hired more workers at a fair day's wage. And again at 5 p.m. to hire even more workers to work or labor in his vineyard. For those who he hired at 5, who would only work 1 hour, he didn't even offer a wage. He simply said, come and work. And off they went to the vineyard. So at the end of the day, the landowner said to the manager, call all of the laborers in and give them their pay. But the landowner, as Matt read in our hearing, was clear about this. Begin with the last and end with the first. So here it was, the end of the day. The 1 hour laborers must have been surprised and delighted because they had no deal. They had made no deal for compensation, and here they were, after only working for 1 hour, being paid for a full day's labor. How cool is that? So you can imagine that the 3 o'clock people, the 9 o'clock people, and the early morning people were starting to think, oh my God, if the 1 hour people got a full day's wage, then this wealthy landowner is really going to show his amazing generosity by paying us more. We are saved for last because we are going to get the greater reward. And you know how we humans are. When humans imagine that they are coming into money that they hadn't expected, they start imagining ways to spend it. Neat for the children. A new cloak and sandals for the missus. God is so good. I am so glad that I have the good fortune to show up early because I am going to stay late to get the greater reward. Are there any actors in the room, bit actors, Hollywood actors of any kind? I don't blame God. It's hard to admit. TV and movie actors in Hollywood have 2 wishes. Number 1, either call me very early so that I can do all of my scenes and go home, leaving me with a full day to myself and getting paid. Or call me very early and keep me all day and half the night so that I can get time and a half and then golden time. Technical difficulties filming that scene and it took a little longer? I don't mind. Keep me here. Some actor doesn't know his lines, and you have to film my scene later. I don't mind. Keep me here. I am on golden time, and I will stay as long as you want me to. These vineyard workers who came early looked at the manager paying the workers who had only worked 1 hour and thought, we are on golden time. Imagine their disappointment turning quickly to anger as they saw the manager, after paying the 1 hour workers a day's wage, place the same amount of money, probably about 1 denarii, which is about a penny, In the hands of those who started to work at 3 in the afternoon, the identical amount of money in the hands of those who started to work at 9 in the morning, and the identical amount of money in the hands of those who had started early in the morning, probably at 5 or 6 a.m., as soon as the sun came up. So by the end of the day, for 1 penny, they had worked 12 or 13 hours. The workers were upset. They were furious. As Matt said in his communion meditation, what kind of God is that? Why would the landlord do that? We have borne the burden and the heat of the day. We are special. We are privileged. Why would you pay us all the same, not taking into account how long we labored? The angry workers blurted out, why would you make us equal with them? Puerto Rican theologian, the Reverend Dr. Pablo A. Jimenez writes, my ethnicity strongly influences my engagement with this passage. I have seen how day laborers stand on street corners from early morning to late in the day waiting for someone to hire them. If they find no work, they will probably go home with nothing for themselves or their families to eat. Of course, these days, with the idea of a job with benefits fast becoming a dream, the idea of equal pay for equal work is of huge concern to everyone, isn't it? In 1963, President John Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act, making it illegal to pay women less for equal work than a man is paid. That was 1963. In 1964, Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, making it illegal to discriminate against Americans on the basis of race. Yet, over a half century later, sex and race remain determining factors when the amount of money that different workers receive is calibrated. British journalist Arthur Kent referred to those who conquer and control when he wrote, those who occupy a territory determine the nature of society in that region. Mr. Kemp understands that laws don't control society, like pride of place reinforced by money. So whether it comes to health care or tax reform, those in the center have no intention of giving up their privilege. They feel they have worked the longest and the hardest and the smartest, and so they deserve the best. But Jesus begins this story. The kingdom of heaven is like. So we receive a huge hint that this allegorical tale that Jesus is telling references a different dimension than the Hebrew villages and towns, or a different dimension than the 21st century cities and industries all over the earth. The landlord does not send his manager out to get the workers, he goes himself. And like the father in the story of the prodigal son, that father who stands in the road looking for his son with no indication as to whether or not he's coming home, just standing there so that he will be there if and when the son decides to return home. The landowner in this story, after hiring the crew, goes back to the spot where he hired the first workers and gets more at 9, and he gets more at 3. And the ones at 5, the ones who get in by the skin of their teeth, he doesn't even make a financial deal with. He just invites them to come and work, and they do. At the end of the day, all of them have made it into heaven's vineyard where the reward is the same. The privilege of doing the work of God. No matter when they have arrived, they receive their day's pay. They receive their manna. They receive this day their daily bread. At the end of the day, what heaven has revealed, what God has given, is the understanding that in the mind of God, to whom all things belong, each of them, each of us, at the end of the day, we are all radically equal before God. Reverend Dr. Catherine Blanchard says that whether you were hired early in the morning, maybe you were a Jewish Christian who might have known Jesus personally, or engaged at 9 a.m., maybe you were sitting by the well as a Samaritan when Jesus went by, or engaged at 3 p.m., maybe you were a recent Jewish convert trying to get used to what Christianity is, or maybe you were engaged in the last hour, you and I, recent Gentile converts from all over the world. You are welcome in this vineyard where there is plenty of work for everyone to do, where the fruit of the vine is life-giving, but where there is no room for ascendancy or dominance or favoritism. At the end of the day, at the end of time, this is a story that examines justice. But it is justice about justice finding its beginning and ending in the generosity of God. God's grace is not dependent upon our great and unique gifts or our ability to be hired before everybody else and to work all day, or the color of our skin, or our gender preference, or our age, or our sex. At the end of the day, we seek justice not to dominate those who have marginalized us. That's just turning the tables. We seek justice in the generosity of God because God is. Many people thought that after the Defense of Marriage Act was passed, churches would be filled with same-sex couples wanting to tie the knot. Across America, that has proven not to be true. After centuries of abuse and persecution, many couples can't feel God's grace flowing to them from the vineyard or from these walls. God's church is called to do more work undoing some really hurtful things the church has done in the name of God, and make clear that it is ultimately not the church that welcomes couples or children or anybody else. It is God's generous grace that welcomes. It is God's grace that is the great leveler. The church stands in as the voice and the face and the arms and the love of God. Following God, everyone is radically equal. At the end of the day, we encounter true justice embedded in God's grace as we show up, willing to labor in the vineyard. Let's pray. God, thank you for making a place for us in your vineyard. Even though there are those who would stand at the gate of the vineyard and deny us entry, even though there are those in the vineyard who say, I have done the greater work, I deserve more praise. Even though there are those in the vineyard who would seek to cause us harm. You continue to bid us come just as we are. And you have promised us that in life and in death and in life again, you will stand for us and you will stand with us. Help us to realize how much you love us and how much you welcome us. In your Son's name we pray.